25 million people died in 3 years. That's half of Europe gone. Between 1347 and 1350, the Black Death killed more humans than any disease in recorded history. But here's the terrifying part. Nobody knew what caused it. Doctors blamed invisible vapors. Priests blamed God's wrath. Entire cities tried to outrun it. They all failed. In October 1347, 12 ships docked in the port of Messina, Sicily. The sailors on board were dying. Black swellings covered their bodies. Blood oozed from the sores. Most were already dead. The ones still breathing wouldn't last the night. City officials ordered the ships to leave immediately. Too late. Within days, people in Messina started showing the same symptoms. Within weeks, thousands were dead. What happened next changed Europe forever. Because this wasn't just a disease. It was an extinction-level event that nobody understood and nobody could stop. The Black Death didn't start in Europe. It started 1 year earlier in 1346, in the city of Kaffa on the Crimean Peninsula. Mongol armies were besieging the city. Then something strange happened. The Mongol soldiers started dying. Thousands of them. They developed fever, chills, and those same black swellings. The swellings appeared in the groin, neck, and armpits. They grew to the size of apples. They turned black. They burst. According to the notary Gabriel de Musis, the Mongols did something unthinkable. They catapulted the infected corpses over the city walls. It was biological warfare. The plague entered Kaffa. Italian merchants fled the city by ship. They sailed west across the Black Sea, through the Mediterranean, heading home. They didn't know they were carrying the disease with them. Every port they stopped it became infected. Constantinople, Athens, Venice, Genoa, and finally, Messina. By January 1348, the plague reached mainland Italy. By June, it hit France and Spain. By August, it arrived in England. The disease moved faster than any army. Between 75 to 200 million people would eventually die worldwide. But in those first 3 years, Europe lost half its population. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. And nobody knew what it was. In Avignon, France, home to Pope Clement VI, the death toll reached 400 people per day in March 1348. The city had 50,000 residents. Within months, 25,000 were dead. Bodies piled in the streets. There weren't enough gravediggers. The Pope consecrated the Rhone River so bodies could be thrown in as a form of burial. Imagine that. A river of corpses. But here's what nobody noticed at the time. The plague had multiple forms. The bubonic form caused those black swellings, the buboes. But there was also pneumonic plague. This version attacked the lungs. Victims coughed blood. They could barely breathe. And it spread through the air, person to person. The pneumonic form killed faster. Sometimes in less than 24 hours. Italian writer Giovanni Boccaccio wrote that people went to bed healthy and were dead by morning. In Florence, his home city, between 60 to 80% of the population died. Medieval doctors tried everything. They had no concept of bacteria or germs. Their medicine was based on the theory of 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. They believed disease came from an imbalance of these humors. Or from bad air, called miasma. So they tried bloodletting. They tried lancing the buboes to drain the pus. They prescribed potions made from crushed emeralds, mercury, and arsenic. Some doctors wore long beech masks stuffed with herbs and flowers to filter the bad air. None of it worked. The death rate stayed the same. What people did next made things worse. Jewish communities were blamed for poisoning wells. In 1349, entire Jewish populations were massacred in Strasbourg, Mainz, and Cologne. 2,000 Jews were burned alive in Strasbourg on February 14, 1349. The plague killed them anyway. It didn't discriminate. For 600 years, historians believed the Black Death was bubonic plague caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis. It was spread by fleas living on black rats. That was the accepted theory. But in 1986, construction workers in London uncovered a mass grave near the Tower of London. Inside were hundreds of skeletons from 1348. Scientists from Public Health England exhumed the remains in 2011. They extracted DNA from the teeth. And they confirmed it. Yersinia pestis. The same bacteria that causes plague today. But here's the disturbing part. Modern bubonic plague doesn't spread that fast. The 1347 plague moved across Europe in 3 years. Modern outbreaks spread much slower. So what made the medieval Black Death so deadly? New research published in 2018 revealed the answer. The primary transmission wasn't rats and fleas. It was human ectoparasites. Body lice and human fleas. The plague spread directly from person to person through parasites living in clothing and hair. That's why it moved so fast. Quarantine didn't work because people brought the parasites with them. In Ragusa, modern-day Dubrovnik, officials invented the first quarantine in 1377. Ships had to wait 40 days before unloading. That's where the word quarantine comes from. Quaranta. Italian for 40. But it barely slowed the disease. By 1350, the first wave ended. But the plague didn't disappear. It came back in cycles. 1361, 1369. 1374, smaller outbreaks continued for 300 years. The Great Plague of London in 1665 killed 100,000 people. The plague didn't truly end in Europe until the early 1700s. Why did it stop? Nobody knows for certain. Better hygiene. Fewer body lice. A change in the rat population. Or maybe the bacterium itself evolved to become less lethal. The Black Death killed between 75 to 200 million people. It took Europe 200 years to recover its population. The social order collapsed. Labor shortages ended feudalism. Peasants demanded higher wages. The power of the church declined because prayers didn't stop death. It reshaped Western civilization. But here's what matters today. Yersinia pestis still exists. Between 1,000 and 2,000 people get plague every year, mostly in Africa, Asia, and South America. The United States sees about 7 cases annually, usually in the rural Southwest. The disease is treatable with antibiotics if caught early. But pneumonic plague, the airborne form, still kills in 24 to 48 hours without treatment. We like to think we've conquered disease. The medieval world couldn't see bacteria. We can. But the next pandemic proved we're not as prepared as we think. If a story like this kept you watching, subscribe. We drop a new dark history every week. And if the Black Death reshaped civilization, what did the plague that hit the Americas in 1520 really do? The death toll was even more shocking. Subscribe for a new dark truth every day.